Alright, ladies, gentlemen, people of the jury, we're in Secret World again. But this ain't a dungeon. Today, we're going to be discussing deck building. From the basics to, well, pretty much just the basics. We're going to be building a deck! Okay, so, building a deck. Today, as the introduction piece, we're going to be focusing on a PvP build for today. It's the one I've been using. I'm going to talk about the thinking that went into it and the kind of considerations that you need to make when actually building a deck. We're going to expand on this one with specific pieces focused on tanking and healing and also DPSing in nightmare runs, as well as potentially a bit of team synergy while we're talking about all those. But as I say, for today, the first of our goals, and this is a good thing to set up, a list of goals. What do you want to achieve out of the build that you are working on? Well, first up, we want a PvP focused build, okay? We want it just because I want quick burst for PvP. We're going to be basing it on clearing the path, which is here. And this is pretty good damage ability, which is guaranteed to penetrate if you hit an afflicted target. So that already sets the stage for stuff we need to be achieving later. So I'm just going to shove that there, because that's going to be kind of the cornerstone of what we're doing. Obviously, the fact that we're guaranteed to penetrate there means that we can stack on a bunch of extra damage effect from penetrate. So we want this build to benefit from penetrates. We're going to be focusing specifically on passive abilities that actually do that. The other thing we want is high mobility, because this is probably going to be more of a two-button spammy shock trooper kind of build, a bit glass cannon-y, so we want to be able to get in and out of trouble very quickly, because obviously clearing the path is melee. You know, so we need to close on enemies very quickly, but also be able to get out of there if, you know, shit hits the fan. And we also want a good amount of utility. We want to be able to, you know, lock people up so that we can't be killed and all that kind of thing. So essentially, the overall thing is we want a very fast, probably AoE burst, because clearing the path is AoE, with an in-out kind of playstyle. So get in, dish out a stack of damage very quickly, and then get out again, with your life intact preferably. So, we got clearing the path. What the hell do we pair that with? Yeah. Honestly, the actives on this build are going to be less important than the secondary effects. So, at the moment, we've got Blade. We don't have a partner weapon. Blade has a couple of things that can be used for synergy. Synergy is, you'll hear it a lot, you know, deck synergy, synergy between two moves, group synergy. Essentially, it just means something's ability to work with everything else. So in the case of your deck synergy, you want your abilities to work together to a common goal to maximize the effect of them all. Blades, which we're basing in, has a couple of things that are relevant to consider. First is afflicted states, and also there is impaired states. If we go, say over here, yeah, we've got Art of War. There's more. There's a couple of things to it, and the other one is we've got Focus and we've got Frenzy abilities. Those are the type of ability, and as you can see from here, you can buff up certain types. So those are what we're looking at to start with, but if we type in, you know, Focus, what we come out with, if we go to active, is not that many abilities, but enough that, you know, we've got Blood, Blade, Pistol, same with Frenzy. If we hit that in, it's actually worse. We've got Chaos, Assault Rifle, Blade. there's a lot to deal with. So we're going to focus on passives first. And obviously the first concern is, how do we get that afflicted state up immediately so that clearing the path can do the work? Now, from a pure DPS perspective, if we search for afflicted and set the search to turn up passives, this is what we get. Except we need to search. That would help. Now, Bloodsport is something that is commonly used, and that it's alright. It works off any ability so long as you hit, and it does very low damage, but essentially it's just to get the afflicted state up. You can see that I haven't actually unlocked it. There's a good reason for that. But at this point, it's a good idea to just make note of things that might be useful to us while we're doing this. So we look through. Now that Fortunate Strike, that's going to be relevant. That's a good ability to make note of. Molecular Exploitation, once again, that's another one to take note of. Fatal Flourish is something to pay attention to. However, if we're making it on 100% pen build, essentially we're clearing the path, stacking a penetration buff effect will not be that useful to us, so we're actually going to completely skip that one. Now, Perfect Storm is... it works with Blade Torrent to apply Afflicted. Blade Torrent is a builder out of the Blades tree. It's right there. That is a potential ability to do it. However, I know from experience that we're actually going to be better off by looking for... where are we? Shoot 'em up. And pairing that with a Frenzy ability. Okay, there's Shoot 'em up. And what Shoot 'em up does, whenever you hit with a Frenzy ability, the target also becomes afflicted with a damage over time effect that deals 88 physical damage, blah blah blah. You can read. Traditionally, Incision is the highest damage one, but it relies on penetrating to get the afflicted state up. We can make note of that one, we can use that one, because that will be very useful. You know, it will proc every time we use Clearing the Path. However, we don't want to be waiting on a penetrate to get started, because this build needs to work very quickly, dish out its damage, and then get out quick. So what we're going to do is use Shoot 'em up, which we're going to bring down there, and we need a Frenzy ability. So we search for Frenzy, and switch it back to active. Now, Steel Pallets is a consumer. Right, Suppressing Fire is a potential. I'm just getting confused by what I'm looking at down here. Anima Outbreak is consumer, Karma is consumer, Bamboo Cutter is builder, Blade Torrent is a builder, Wheel of Knives is a builder, but what I think we want to go for is Escalation, because it does less damage. However, the debuff that it gives is going to be, well, it's a damage increase. That's very good. So that will ultimately increase all the damage we're doing to the targets and do it very quickly. So that is something that we wouldn't mind having on the bar. So if we go back to our passives and continue searching through for Afflicted to start with, so we see that Incision, we made a note of, will be useful, because that does a decent amount of damage. I'm going to drag that right there. Yep, right there. There's a couple more. Most of them, for example, Iron Maiden is another one that stacks Penetration, Chance, and Doom, wherever that's got... No, Doom's something else. Never mind, I've got notes. I'm confusing myself. There's other abilities that we're not going to use. Now, Flight of Daggers. Flight of Daggers is a potential good one, but there's a reason we're not going to use it, and I'll discuss that in a little while. However, that is a very good option for most about anything, you know? You can throw that into any build and it will function very, very admirably. So we've got a couple of passives down there. Salting the Wound is something else we want. Whenever you apply Afflicted, it's an extra damage. We're going to be applying Afflicted a lot, so we're going to throw that on as well. Part 2 is we want to search for Penetrate for passives. So immediately, Sudden Return, that is going to be huge. Guaranteed penetration there, that's already dealing, based on my really bad DPS gear, 481. Sudden Return on top, that is a huge damage increase, so that is going on the bar right away. Next up, Get Out of My Way, guy. That's a curious one. That could be useful for utility. Arterial Pulse. Arterial Pulse is very good. We're actually going to use that one because it's just great. That also benefits the AoE nature. We keep going, we keep going. 5 times the charm is an interesting notion because of the impair. Oh, there's Doom. Yep. Whenever you penetrate, you gain blah blah blah. Oh wait, you can make your guaranteed penetrate. And with over-penetration, once again, same story. There's Incision again. As you can see, it works off of both Penetrate and Afflicted. Either way, we're just going to go down. I'm pretty much going to tell you, we're going for Twist the Knife. Because Twist the Knife is going to stack up a plus damage effect on us. So this extra damage effect, which 9%, stacks with the debuff from Escalation. So we get both of them, which means we're getting a 39% damage increase if we get both of them together. That's very big. So already we've established that we're working off of Penetrate and Afflicted, and that tooltip right there won't go away. Now, the reason we're not going to use Flight of Daggers is because of a little something that I happen to know. There's an ability called Gross Anatomy, which I can't spell. Anat-o-me. Well done. So Gross Anatomy, whenever one of your damage over time effect expires, it will perform an additional hit that deals 130 magical damage. The 130 is based on my gear. All of these damage figures alter depending on what you're wearing, and my gear is pretty much, I have never played a DPS in this game, so it's all stuff that I picked up off of greed rolls and just thrown together. Now, all of these afflicted states that we're applying are damage over time, so that will proc off of those when they expire. However, and we haven't been able to parse it properly to check this, the damage from Gross Anatomy is coming out far higher than you would expect if it was just from Afflicted's expiring. We're fairly certain that it's actually proccing when the afflicted states are replaced or refreshed as well. So the amount of damage this is kicking out is actually quite crazy. So that is going to complete out our passives. So now we've got a set of passives. We've got a slightly better idea. Go away, tooltip. Why do you do this to me? Yeah. So I'd show you where they all are on the tree, but honestly, the search is your friend. Like, it's just the best. So with our passives indeed, we can concentrate a little bit on what we want our other actives to be. So straight away we said high mobility, right? So we're looking at teleport and dash effects. So if we quickly look for dash and set it to active, we need to be blade and chaos. So there's surging blades and there's helter skelter. Now surging blades is less damage and lacks the impair effect that helter skelter does. However, it's only got a 15-second cooldown rather than a 45. I'm going to go with helter skelter simply because I like the idea of that impair. However, for much faster paced gameplay, you'd probably want to be picking up surging blades because it would serve you much better. Now, we also want a way out, so we could go with both of those, but actually, we're going to use the dash as our way out. If somebody sees you running at them, you don't want to be working on a dash. You probably want to be using a teleport. Now, Flicker would be great to get out. It's also elemental, so we can't use it. But a real entry one is Spiral of Death. That's a nice chunk of damage as well. It will work with the shock and awe factor that would be very useful to us. So in terms of utility, the things that Blade and Chaos see, we have weakened, impaired. Impaired is pretty much the way to go here. So we search for impair actives. Now a lot of search results. Let's cut it down a bit. Let's reduce it to Chaos Focus and see what we've got here. So, you know, we've got a bit of selection. I don't have many of these unlocked, unfortunately. Now that I quite like. Yeah. However, what I'm going to go for right now, and there is room for improvement on this build, there's always room for improvement, is to look at blades. Now, Art of War deals a huge chunk of damage and impairs for less time than that Chaos one we just looked at did. However, the glance effect will help you stay alive when you're in the thick of it. So that is my choice because of that, because it's, well, it'll just work out better. That benefits from impaired, it doesn't apply it, and yeah. I'm just figuring this one out. Now, I actually have Trial by Swords in this build normally, however, Stunning Swirl looks very good, doesn't it? I think that's actually what we're going to put down right now. Oh wait, never mind, it's an active. Elite, rather. Yes, it's definitely active, but it's also elite. Most of these are elite. And if we go back to Chaos, Domino Effect is also elite. So then, pretty much, if you want to affect multiple targets, it's going to be an elite. Yep, that'd be why I didn't use that one instead. Now we know. Now we know. So, Trial by Swords is a great thing to throw at. For example, if you're trying to nuke down a healer, you can throw that on to stop them healing, lock them up a bit more. So now we have one thing left, and we probably want a Chaos Consumer for this. Now, there's going to be a lot to choose from in here. 29. So, what do you choose? I'm going to save a little bit of time. We're not going to use a Chaos Consumer. Instead, we're going to look for an ability called Uneven Ground. And there's a good reason for this. Uneven Ground deals some damage, but it also applies... oh, yeah. You get an evade off it as well, so it's utility, it's damage avoidance, it's good. But the main thing is, it applies the same stacking debuff that Escalation does. Why is that good? It applies several stacks of it, so you start out with 3. If you use Spiral of Death to get in, hit Uneven Ground, and then start with your Escalation and Clearing the Path rotation, you will immediately, before you have your first Clearing the Path used, have at least a 12% damage increase, which is nothing to scoff at. So right there, this is the build we're going with. So a quick rundown of that one again. We've got Helter Skelter, Art of War, Uneven Ground, Trial by Swords, Spiral of Death, Clearing the Path, Escalation. And for the passives, we have Shoot 'em Up, Twist the Knife, Arterial Pulse, Incision, Sudden Return, Salt in the Wound, and Gross Anatomy. So what exactly does this do? Well, you can see I got a damage meter up. Let's do it. So pretty much hit 2 buttons, win at life. Unfortunately, due to a slight bit of lag while I'm recording, this is not coming out as high as it could. I have, if you get lucky with a penetrator or crit straight off the bat, you can spike straight up to 9k. The average in my gear has tended to be 7.5. Unfortunately, if you start off badly and there's a bit of FPS lag, which causes gaps between the abilities going, it takes a while to build it up. Ideally, you don't want to be taking this long to actually be in the fight. And of course, you know, you got Helter Skelter get out, except I was facing into something that I can't run through, so it didn't work. Lot of war! Go! Go! Run for the hills! Anywho, that's how that looks. So, essentially a 7.5k average off of spamming 2 buttons. I couldn't complain, honestly. And that came out of an evening and a morning of testing to put that together, because I wanted to just play around in Fusang a little bit. I came to the conclusion of Blade and Chaos in a more direct fashion that obviously my healing abilities weren't going to be that helpful. I was going to adapt my tanking abilities to a DPS build, and of course Blade Chaos is a very common tanking build. That's what I have in my tanking spec. But they do work very well together anyway. So the key lessons to consider are, you know, either find an ability or a weapon you like, or, you know, something of the sort. Let's say we're using shotguns here. Now, shotguns, a lot of us will have spreadsheets to tell us this, but here's the key points of shotguns. They apply and exploit weakened and hindered. They use strike and blast abilities, and yeah, they also benefit from range, but that's pretty much a shotgun specific thing. It does mean that shotguns pair very well with melee weapons, particularly hammers, which also work on strike and weakened states. So you can get very good synergy between hammers and shotguns. And that's pretty much, I hope, the introduction to deck building in this game. Hopefully it was helpful, hopefully it's a little bit of an insight into the kind of process of making a build. You know, set your goals, figure out your starting point, and then just synergy, synergy, synergy. See what types of effects you can essentially exploit. Afflicted, impaired, weakened, hindered for status effects, and you know, strike, blast, focus, frenzy for damage types, crits and penetrates in terms of procs, and just build it based on those. And of course, have a set of goals. How do you need this build to work? For the introduction, obviously, we just made a light PvP build. Next time, probably we'll be working with either tanking or healing, maybe Nightmare DPS, maybe all three. We're gonna see. Either way, thanks for watching. Please hit some buttons, provided you agree with the associated sentiments. English, solid. And I'll see you next time. Bye-bye now. And attention, the servers are coming down in 2 hours for scheduled maintenance. Downtime is scheduled to last for 3 hours. Thank you. Yeah, this is just a quick addition. For anybody wondering, the single target effect of this, without Spiral of Death unfortunately, looks like this. Except clearing the path didn't just fire. We're going to have a slightly longer window for this. Obviously this is very limited by my gear, which my DPS set is bad. However, we've gotten this up to about 1700 DPS, just hitting 2 buttons. So that's how that looks. And of course, something else I didn't mention. In PvP, I tend to throw on these 2 pieces of tank gear in order to bring my health up to a less farmable value, shall we say. Yeah, that should about conclude the additions there. About 1.4 single target based on that. Yeah. Take it easy, people.